in New York City, and not just a YouTube show. When you know, you better grab a straw, learn about the law. It's cool here in the shade, sipping motions and lemonade. Cool heads will prevail, kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Oh, Melanie Little is going live. Oh no, where is Melanie? Follow the island's melody. Is a concert within reach. No surprise, she's at Jones Beach. She heard some music far away. Captain Jack Sack Harbor Bay. He sings and his piano plays. Not all sounds are waterways. Speaking Yiddish and Latin, it's not just for Manhattan. It's for Goethe and Meshegas. Ridiculousness that insanus. Oy vey, Marcus. Proset, that's for schmucks. Be cool, be kind, be classy. My cupcakes are sweet and sassy. And not just a YouTube show. When you know, you know. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Melanie Little is going live.
Happy Sunday. Good morning, my friends, and happy Sunday. Sunday fun day. Today is Sunday, May 4th, 2025, and we are in the thick of it with the re-persecution of Karen Read out of Norfolk County, Massachusetts. We're doing this again. We're doing it again. How is everybody today on this lovely Sunday? Something crazy happened. And a photo leaked from Friday's sequestration party. I don't know if you've seen this, but I don't think it was at the VFW hall this time because it looks a little bit nicer, but here they are.
Is it 2:27 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Ultimately,
apparently on Friday,
you will agree
somebody
that
posted
there was
this
a
on
Google
Twitter.
search done, and now I'm going to
I
ask
thought
you
it was pretty hilarious, and I thought you might enjoy it
correct?
too.
That was done in the morning at the request of Miss Reed.
Mr. Cave, I didn't ask you that.
So
I
there's
asked you a
that.
yes or no question. Did you understand my question?
Could you repeat it, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
I love it. I don't know who did that. I will shout out whoever it is that posted that on Twitter when I close it out, but too funny. It made me laugh. I thought it might make you laugh too. So my usual co-host when I usually have another attorney stream with me is Mark Betterow, and we're both New York attorneys. And so we've been watching the first trial of Karen Read together and the second persecution of Karen Read together, Mark Betterow and I. And Mark Betterow is also a New York attorney for something like close to 30 years. Oh, thank you. We hit 90K the other day on Friday. 10 more K. And we're going to get that silver play button. I know we can do it. Good morning. Kelly Reed is here. Good morning. Kelly Reed in the house. And so Mark Betterow and I have been screaming into the closet and also at you and with you about the way things are in New York and the way things are in most other courtrooms that we've been out in throughout the country and how different it seems to be in Massachusetts. For example, things like attorneys are not allowed to state grounds for objections, whereas in New York, if you object, the judge will look at you and wait until you state the grounds for your objection, because as an attorney, you're supposed to know the grounds and you're supposed to be able to articulate the grounds, but it doesn't seem to be that way in Massachusetts. Turning over all your impeachment evidence to the prosecution is another wild thing for us, because it's like giving someone your smoking gun so they can take away your smoking gun so that the witnesses can be prepped on the smoking gun. And we saw that during the first trial when Jen McCabe was prepped on the fact that she did go to Sergeant Lank's house the day after the murder of John O'Keefe, which is wild. And we saw some more testimony on that this week. And that's just a couple of the victim witness advocate, perhaps, maybe, in my opinion, or as has been said by many out there, the victim witness advocate in this case, giving Brian Albert and Brian Higgins the go-ahead to destroy their cell phones the day or two before the preservation order came down. Just really insane things. That Michael Morrissey, the district attorney, getting on television, it wasn't even a press conference. It was just a 5-minute hostage video that he recorded in his conference room, defending Colin Albert and the Alberts and the McCabes, calling Karen Read's defense basically smoke and mirrors. The man never went in the house. He said the same thing. John O'Keefe never went in the house. Michael Proctor was never at 34th Avenue. This was in April of 2023. He recorded this 5-minute video, sent it out to all the news outlets. It was on the World Wide Web very quickly. And I call it the hostage video because it looks like he's reading from a script. And it looks like somebody was off camera with a gun to his head, and he had to read this. And then some emails surfaced between David Traub, who was the PR person for Morrissey's office, and somebody named Julie, in which David Traub said to Julie Blank, Chief Helena Rafferty, who is the chief at Canton PD, has relayed your concerns to me, and it just so happens that we happen to be filming that video statement right now as we speak. And then that video statement was released. That was all the way back in August 2023. So if you're new to this case, welcome. Welcome to the insanity, the upside down, the inside out, Narnia, Hunger Games that is Norfolk County, where John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. A car did not hit John O'Keefe, and yet his girlfriend is on trial for second-degree murder. So I thought, who better than to discuss this case with me than an actual Massachusetts criminal defense attorney by the name of Tom Kokonowski. And you may remember Tom Kokonowski because we found Tom Kokonowski. We found him. He didn't find us. All the way back in November when we watched the trial of Brian Camp in Hampshire County. For those of you who don't recall, Brian Camp was on trial for killing a home invader who broke into his home, tried to kill him, his girlfriend, and perhaps the 2 little girls that were sleeping in the next room. Brian Camp was lucky enough to have a firearm in the house. He was able to, after a long struggle, get downstairs, grab a firearm, shoot the home intruder who would have killed him, who happened to be his girlfriend's boss at Dunkin' Donuts. Like, you couldn't even make the story up. His girlfriend's on the phone with 911. This was in Hampshire County. It took over 20 minutes for the first responders to get there. And during that time, the home invader tried to come at Brian Camp again. He shot him again, and that was the fatal shot. Well, Hampshire County DA decided to try him for manslaughter, and we watched this trial on the edge of our seats, and we watched our now friend Tom Kokonowski with the Mad Men suits, and he was a cross between, you guys said he was a cross between something out of Mad Men and a skinny Drew Carey. That's the way you guys described him, and I think he's okay with that description. And we watched Brian Camp be acquitted by a Hampshire County jury, and there were tears of joy. Like, he became Father of the Year, Brian Camp did, for saving his 2 girls from a lifetime of trauma, because the prosecutor tried to say that Brian Camp should have just went upstairs, grabbed his 2 little girls, and ran outside past the home intruder that was trying to kill him, and got in the car and drove away while he was laying bloody on the floor. Like, it was insane. You guys watched it with me. Tom is here. He's got over 30 years experience as a criminal defense attorney in Massachusetts. If you need him, you're able to hire him because he's still working. He's not retired like I am, but I'll let him introduce himself to you. Shout out to, it looks like somebody named @Jen Logan who posted that picture from the sequestration party on Twitter. So I will always call it Twitter. And without any further ado, my friend and yours, fan favorite, Tom Kokonowski. Hello.
Fan favorite. Hi.
Your fan favorite. Sure.
I'll believe the skinny Drew Carey when I see skinny Drew Carey. I was told initially that it was Mad Men, and which I was very happy about because the only thing I spend money on ever is my suits, and Drew Carey, which there's a couple of photographs of me on court TV that I can actually see that.
That you look well. Drew Carey is skinny now, though.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
So yeah, I mean, I think he used to be.
Might actually be skinnier than me.
Plumper, but how are you? We've been talking about this case behind the scenes, if you didn't know. Oh, well, for the audience anyway. So I know that you've been watching this second trial. I don't know that you were able to watch the first trial. So
I've gone just out of 2 things: peer pressure, because everybody else is watching it and talking about it and stuff. But also, I'm a guy who learns by doing. First by watching somebody do something and then doing it myself. And so when I saw the level of lawyering all around on this case, whichever side you're on, they are high-end attorneys on both sides. Somebody represented,
Whitey Bulger.
Whitey Bulger. That
Nice to
was
meet you there.
the case. And going and actually doing a little bit of research about the other lawyers. I mean, everybody's very high end, a lot of experience, and so on a selfish end, I started watching it so that I could see if there's anything that I could learn, and there has been, and maybe much to your chagrin and the chagrin of some, if not most, of your watchers, listeners. I am familiar with most of the stuff that I'm watching going on in this courtroom. This is stuff that I am familiar with. I mean, there are things in every case that you know that certain lawyers are not going to like the way certain rulings are being made, and there's a lot of seems to be favoring the defense or the prosecution, and that is in every single case, in every single courtroom, in every single trial. And what you have to do as a prosecutor, which I've been, and a defense attorney, which I've been for a lot longer, is if you don't know who the judge is, you better figure out what she wants, what she's going to do, how she's going to act, and adjust. Because guess what? She's the judge.
Yeah, we've all had judges who have been, we thought, less than fair to us. But tell everybody who's here, because a lot of people might not know about you. Tell them a little bit about your background and experience.
My background is that I watched my oldest brother when I was 10 years old. I watched him. He was 21 years older than me. I watched him try a case. He brought me to the Lee District Court with him. I had no idea where I was going. And I sat and I watched him try a case. And I just watched a guy who was making everybody, including the judge, laugh. Being aggressive and winning this case. And it was just, I sat there and I said, that's what I want to do. And so I did. So I went to law school at night, worked in the DA's office full-time during the day, started off as a victim witness advocate. I've heard there's controversy with the victim witness advocate. I can tell you that I almost went to jail as a victim witness advocate for some of the things that I didn't know I was doing wrong, but a judge called me sidebar, told the jury to go out, and lit me up pretty hard. And I never did that again. And while I was a victim witness advocate, I was lucky enough to be the advocate for the homicide division. And so I got to be part of cases that had the best, most experienced lawyers on both sides. And so I watched and learned, and then became a student prosecutor before I graduated law school. It's called 303 here in Massachusetts, Rule 303. If you have a sponsor, you can try cases. And before I graduated, I had a whole bunch of trials under my belt in the Holyoke District Court. Was a prosecutor for about a year and a half until the first time I was required to ask for a jail sentence. And, one of the things that people have to keep in mind is that they're, and you talked about it, this is an elected position, district attorney. And so there's a lot of decisions, unfortunately, made on a political level. And I had lost my first 10 jury trials because I did not know. The first thing I recognized was picking a jury for the first time. I was completely outmatched. I had no idea what was going on, but lost my first 10 and then won my 11th. And I was required to ask for jail time, and I didn't want to, but I was required to.
Really?
About 2 months later, had a chat with the DA and said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And I am clearly more wired on the defense side. And nobody likes a defense attorney until their kid needs one, is pretty much how I look at it. And so started off in a little boutique firm, and then went out on my own, which is where I am today.
And so you've tried lots of cases, and everything that you've done your entire career has been Massachusetts,
Correct.
right? State
Ma-
and federal court?
Yes, federal and state. Mostly state, because at the same time, when you're looking at a privately retained defense team, it's a business, and you got to generate income, and not most people don't have the money to afford a federal defense. Most people don't have enough money to afford a superior court capital case defense. I've heard, and I don't know what's true or what's not true, but I've heard that there's pro bono going on and she doesn't have enough money for this case, particularly right now. It is so expensive. The expert witnesses, the lawyers, I mean, it is a very expensive venture. And one of the advantages that the Commonwealth has is essentially an endless supply of money.
Right. Right. They
Um,
can hire as many experts as they want. They have the ability to pay them.
They can hire Hank Brennan,
They can hire Hank Brent. That's something else we've talked about.
despite
Um,
130, I think they boast on their website, 130 employees.
yeah, they have over 50 attorneys in-house on
Um,
salary.
I don't know, and I didn't watch a lot of the first one, but
Mhm.
I've gone back now and watched because I see the comments online about people said something the last time and they're saying it this time, and we're watching defense attorneys trying to impeach credibility with prior inconsistent statements, which I found is difficult right now. I'm a
Mhm.
big believer in my own experience that it is the prosecution that has the advantage when there is a retrial.
Right.
I've had 4, and each time the prosecution had the advantage because the holes that we were able to poke, which is basically my job, we don't have the burden. Our job is to show reasonable doubt, and that's counterpunching for anybody who's been a boxer or trained martial arts, counterpunching and trying to poke holes. And when you don't poke enough holes, and they get to do it all over again, then they get to see how it is that they get to fix things, like move cars a little further down the street this
Mhm.
time from the last time was testified to,
Right.
or
Changing the whole timeline.
it's
In the
and
first trial, the impact was at 12:45. That's slowly morphed, and now they're saying 12:31. You know, I think. Well, I mean, what do you think so far? To me, I mean, the defense has had a dry a couple. I mean, there's so many things that I want to talk to you about, but I think the defense has an advantage this time because I think that these witnesses have testified so many times in so many different proceedings, and we're seeing that now with like Jennifer McCabe has testified at 2 grand juries, a trial, given a million statements to a million different officers who she now claims all of them wrote it down wrong. I think it's going to be harder for the star witnesses for the Commonwealth to keep their stories straight, which could be an advantage for the defense. What do you think?
so, and I don't want to digress too far, but
Mhm.
since you've asked me, I've sort of thought about this, and we talked about the advantage that the Commonwealth has with the money and the people and the resources. And I got yesterday, I got an email from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab for a motor vehicle homicide case that I have, and the number of people who are involved in that stuff. I read for 4 hours, and I'm about a third of the way through.
And so is the motor vehicle
Motor vehicle,
fatality?
motor vehicle homicide,
Is it
correct.
pedestrian versus motor vehicle or motor vehicle? 2 cars?
Best friend alleged to have been killed in his own car.
So passenger in a car.
Correct.
So 1 car accident. Is there a motor vehicle crash report?
There is.
They never filled one out in the murder of John O'Keefe.
That's interesting.
Never.
They have my case. They have DNA trying to place my guy as the driver because they're not quite sure. And one of the things they have to prove is operation. So I got that yesterday. And the reason I'm talking about that is, and again, in my constant quest to educate myself, watching guys like Alan Jackson and Alessi, who I started off with kind of being like, I don't know, but I like him. First
So methodical.
because I would need to hire him if I needed that cross-examination of the expert, Mr. Wiffle or whatever his name is,
Right.
Wiffle Ball. Because I went to law school to avoid math, and the Celebrite stuff is just it makes my eyes glaze over. And he taught me some stuff. But
And he
anyway,
made it simple. He made it. I thought the way that Alessi crossed him made it simple for the jury to understand.
well, that's it. So I forgot what I was saying, but I had this idea based on, or this thought based on what, after the camp trial. Actually, it was only a couple of days ago that I went back and watched your reaction to the verdict. Obviously, I didn't know who you were.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched your reaction to the verdict, and you brought tears to my eyes because there was somebody else out there who was like, you raised your hands and were like, praise God, and save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That was,
We were all crying. We were all crying.
That was pretty cool. But
I mean, yeah, that was a real time reaction. You're an actor too. So like when I have to cry on camera, I can just do it. I don't need a cry stick. I can do it. Like it comes easy to me. But that was a genuine, like real time reaction. Everybody in the chat was crying. It restored our faith in the justice system in Massachusetts. Anybody who's in the chat that did not watch the Brian Camp trial, I think we only have 4 videos on it because it was so hard to find like real time coverage. So
they hid that somehow.
They totally hid it. They totally hid it. They didn't want anybody to know that trial was going on.
I believe that. And so the reason I bring that up is because obviously I didn't watch it during the trial, but after the verdict, then the court TV people came on, and nobody believed we were going to win that case. And there was one guy who I think I don't know if it's the guy or not, with the pink glasses. Mike?
Oh,
the pink eyeglasses, who was talking about, and I teach in my law school class that if that was a jury of robots, he would have been convicted. You try the case to 12 human beings.
Yeah.
Who the judge is going to say you can use your common sense and experience. You must use your common sense and experience when you deliberate. And so to be able to digest the Celebrite stuff and cross-examine the way that he cross-examined that expert, Mr. Wiffle, was very impressive. And he taught me more about Celebrite, and he taught me more about what questions to ask, because I have a lot of Celebrite stuff. Another thing that I'd like to say about Alessi, and sort of piggyback off of what I said about, the judge is the judge. And you better, if you don't know who, he's from New York, and Alan Jackson's from California. And I can tell you from my experience, and as a young lawyer, I was trying to figure out how I could try a case in every single courthouse in the Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be dead before that happens. But, we're human beings, and each courtroom is its own sort of entity, and people are provincial, and, you're the fancy lawyer showing up with the nice suit from New York or California, whether it's Florida or Massachusetts or whatever, there is who is this guy?
Right.
And I believe that the judge is telling them clearly what it is that she is going to do in certain circumstances. And Alessi had the unenviable task of explaining the ARCA mess. And he did a really good job on that too. But one of the things that, because, and I don't judge anybody, but of course I judge anybody when they're not doing what I think they should be doing. But Alessi would keep telling the judge what he was going to do before he was doing it. And I
Right.
just like I told you the other day, I was yelling at Alan Jackson through your podcast about the way that he was asking questions, and before that I was yelling at Alessi.
Just to tell everyone, that was Wednesday. That was before Friday's excellence, right? You were
Yes.
yelling it on Wednesday. Yeah.
I've been yelling every time I've watched,
Yeah.
because it frustrates me. But she said it. The judge said, "You don't have to tell me what you're going to do. Just do it."
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment, I have perceived that that is what Alessi is doing. And his cross-examination I thought it was great on a very difficult subject, ending with, and so this circle that shows the phone could have been in the house was not included in your report, right?
It was in his report. He just didn't put it in the PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
Yeah. So he got the jury to think that they're withholding stuff from the jury.
How
A couple of different times, not just with that one circle.
does that get past the prosecutor?
They've had this expert since the first trial. They knew it. They were just trying to, it wasn't brought out as expertly last time. And also Whiffin's rendered a new report. And it's really weird because, as you say, you have a lot of cases involving Celebrite, right?
Yes.
Whiffin is an employee of Celebrite, but he took a 3-week course. Okay. I don't think he has a college degree. He's definitely not a forensic expert. He's not certified. He's not like some of the other experts that we're going to see.
Melanie.
Yeah.
He didn't know that 32 degrees Fahrenheit is freezing.
I know.
you
And people were
are you
trying to
kidding
give him
me?
a break about that. They're talking about battery temperature and he couldn't. That's like Trooper Paul not knowing what, kinematics is or the equation for velocity. And I'm not saying that I know off the top of my head either, but he's the expert.
Well, they're dancing with the one they brung.
Right. But they could have found somebody else. I mean, Whiffin works for Celebrite, but he's basically the help desk. When you have an issue with Celebrite, you call him and he solves your issue. Then she allows him to do that real-time demonstration, which was a total surprise to the defense. Like, hello, what? With his own software. So now it's an infomercial for Artex.
In the freezer, that thing?
The one where he did the real-time search, the Google search, and then did it again, and then it reverts back to the timestamp. And then Alessi said, "But your new version of Celebrite took away the timestamp, didn't it?" He's like, "Well, yeah."
Yeah, Alessi did a great job, and is doing what the judge has expressly told him. I know there's frustration. I see what's going on. I have been in the chairs of those defense attorneys while this stuff is going on, and whatever you perceive this stuff is, here's how I see it. Trial lawyers their job is not to criticize a judge.
Right.
Our job is to make a record. Our job is to fight as hard as we can without getting locked up for contempt, to get what we think should come in or stay out. And when it doesn't happen, then you adjust. The appeals court lawyers are the ones who are able to write down the criticisms of not only the judges, but the defense lawyers and the prosecution too. Alessi's has impressed me with my own. Again, these are my own opinions and perceptions, but he went from, when I was looking at him going, oh boy, this is kind of a nerdy sort of, how is he going to be as a cross-examiner? Well, he nailed it.
Well, his expertise is experts. That's his jam. That's what he does. He's working pro bono. He believes in her innocence so fiercely that he came into this case and he bills north of $1,800 an hour, I believe. And but he doesn't come. Do you know who Joe Tacopina is?
Oh, yes.
Joe Tacopina is like a New York lawyer who's like, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada boom. That is not Alessi. Alessi is not that guy from New York. He comes in, you don't really know where he's from. You know, he's very, he's very respectful to the judge. And you can see the judge treats him differently than she treats Alan Jackson, who she appears to hate. Speaking of that, let's just go to this clip because a lot of people have been talking about this. I saw you guys in the pre-chat talking about this, and I'm gonna get your thoughts on this. This was during the arc of Wadir.
I know,
and
what
a lot of people have pointed out the signals between Brennan and the judge. So just everyone watch if you haven't seen this already, and tell us if you see anything, and if the people in the chat are crazy for thinking this.
Yes.
Okay. Let me show you this document. Do you recognize that one?
Yes.
What's that?
That is the attachment to the email.
She takes off her glasses.
You recognize reading that?
Yes.
Do you recognize discussing the case before you testified on June 24th, 2024?
I never discussed this with him. This is something that I sent to him, that I did on my own, and that I sent to him. But he never asked this of me, and we never discussed it.
So you sent him what you thought would be the best questions and answers for him to ask you when you testified.
So this is something I routinely do when I work with attorneys, okay? I prepare
Shakes his
this
head.
on my own to prep
Judge
myself
puts her
and prepare
glasses
for
on.
trial.
That, please.
Write something down.
There's an email with a document I'd like to attach this as an exhibit.
Okay.
And that's kind of
Exhibit 1.
where it ends, but it made the internet go crazy that they're giving signals to each other. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if he was looking at somebody else. I have no idea. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. And once again, I hate to be the burster of the bubble, but I don't think that there's anything, and I'm going to now pronounce the word nefarious.
Nefarious.
Because it was interesting when I think Attorney Jackson said nefarious, it was then pronounced nefarious. No, there's not. That could have been, and again, you only have one angle from that camera. You don't know what's going on in the rest of the courtroom. That could be anything from there was something at sidebar talked about. If something comes out, we agree that this, all the parties, we're expecting something. I can see where somebody would say something nefarious or nefarious was going on there, but there's no way.
Agreed. There's a lot of cameras in that courtroom, and it would just be ridiculously stupid. Here's another point that we were just talking about. Let's take a look at this. This has to do with the way she was treating Alessi. There was no jury in the room. I think this was something either during trial or pre-trial.
You know what? You're going to win this, so why don't you just let me make my ruling? Okay. So I understand there have been
very short
repeated violations.
This is just like a little tiny clip. So hang on, it's only a minute long. Yeah. You want me to play it again?
Yeah,
this is where it starts.
If you can go back to the ethical rule that she cites.
This is just a little tiny 1 minute clip. So she's going to cite it, I think, after this. Hang on.
You know what? You're going to win this, so why don't you just let me make my ruling? Okay. So I understand there have been repeated violations of the reciprocal discovery orders and my orders, repeated and deliberate. And Mr. Brennan, I understand completely the Commonwealth's argument, completely the ambush that has been set upon here. However, a defendant's right to a fair trial is paramount to everything. So I'm going to allow the ARCA witnesses to testify. I am going to allow what I expect to be a very robust cross-examination. And I'm going to allow them to testify to everything that they said up until yesterday. That's where we stand. And I expect counsel to comply with all rulings and rules of the court and all rules of professional conduct, and no more nonsense. Let's just try this case.
Other than those regular.
This we'll get to later, but I just thought that was, yeah, she did point out an ethical rule that really had nothing to do with the matter at hand.
Well, there again is Alessi. Somehow it must have been talked about before he was looking at the ARCA issues. I don't know if the judge had used it earlier or whatever, but she said, how do I square ethical rule 1 point whatever it is?
1.15 maybe.
that we as Massachusetts lawyers are supposed to keep the entire file intact for 10 years. And he said, and I was like, in my head, I'm going, that's between the client and the lawyer. That's just in case something goes on. And he said, well, Your Honor, that rule has to do with keeping a client's file for the client. And that is where she said, why don't you sit down? You're going to win this. Again, he knew that rule and he knew what it was about. And
Mhm.
I don't think it, he was prevented from going on about what that ethical rule was about because she said, you're going to win this, sit down. That rule doesn't apply. So
There's one rule
good
that
on
is
him.
designed to, you have to retain your file in case the client ever wants it. So you have to have everything to give the client, right?
That's the one.
But 1.15 has to do with attorney trust accounts and keeping property separate. So that's 1.15. I don't know because I don't have that clip pulled up, unfortunately. But so I don't know exactly which rules she cited, but we all know that it was either having to do with retaining an entire copy of the client's file in case the client ever wanted it, but it does not include communication. So communications between the client and the attorney, but not communications between the attorney and the expert.
Yeah, I just have to say, the whole ARCA thing is bizarre to me.
Okay, good. Tell
that
us
is-
from a Massachusetts lawyer point of view.
That is an experience that I have not had. That the feds had started their investigation and the feds hired these guys and that these guys were sort of doing it unbeknownst to people for a period of time. And then it was found, and then it was DOC, Department of Justice, orders that you're not giving anything to anybody. And then ultimately they get it. And it was very strange about how it is that they were supposed to get it.
Right.
I can understand why the judge was unhappy with the way things were said and written, and I don't know if it was out of confusion or whatever. But that one, I was like, oh dear.
How can you turn over what you don't have? So here's what they wanted: all of the materials that ARCA used in their analysis and investigation and reconstruction, but those materials were provided to them from the feds, but they were delineated in the report. Here's what we used: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If those are under a federal protective order and the feds aren't going to release those materials, the defense had everything the prosecution had, because the way that both sides got this information was through the federal 2E dump, where they dumped 3,074 pages of information on both sides. So both sides had everything that there was. The fact that the prosecution was trying to show collusion between these experts and the defense team just seemed to me to be so wild.
And again, I've not watched it as thoroughly as most of you, but that's not where the problem I perceived was. The problem was communications being denied and payment of bills being denied when there was a bill that was paid. And I know that the fight, again, watching Alessi, that the bill came after everything was done at 23 grand or whatever it is. And he said there was nobody more surprised that the bill came and the amount. But there's an issue with whether there was a question as to whether or not they had been paid or retained. That I thought that was what the judge had the biggest problem with. And
she got mad about 100 text messages that were deleted between Alan Jackson and Dr. Wolf before the first trial, because they came in to testify. They had to come in for voir dire, then they had to come in for testimony. There was no arrangement for them to be paid because they were still under retainer with the feds. And so the attorneys and Wolf said that all of those text messages were logistical, here's when you have to come in, flight arrangement, hotel arrangements. There was no agreement to pay. They didn't get the bill until after the trial was over. And when they got this bill, they were like, oh, okay. They called the DOJ and said, are we allowed to pay this? Can we pay this? And they said, yeah, go ahead, pay it. So, I mean, you and I both know how expensive expert witnesses are. To fly 2 guys in who are biomechanical engineers from Pittsburgh, put them up in hotels twice, pay for testimony. And I mean, I know surgeons that get upwards of $15,000 a day just for testimony because they have to cancel a day of surgeries and you have to pay them 2 weeks in advance because if you cancel, because you know how things go at trial, it's a moving, living, breathing thing. It's fluid. If you wind up not needing them, that's non-refundable. Sorry, pay me again. I'll come another day. So you can't even make a good faith argument that 20 grand was for their testimony, their travel, their per diem, their prep time. And so it just seems so wild to me. Have you ever had a criminal case that was in state court that had an ongoing federal investigation investigating the It just doesn't happen, right? So
Not that I knew about.
Do.
Not that I knew about. I was the police commission lawyer for a police department out here or out in Western Mass. And those were frequently going on, federal investigations. I represented the police commission that disciplined police in the town out here. And so that's the only experience I have with that. And I did have in that experience, but that's administrative law. Yeah, they wouldn't give us anything.
Right. And also, since you've handled cases for clients that are involved in federal cases, what's the deal with do the feds make an announcement when they close an investigation?
No.
Right. So this whole fallacy that the FBI has closed their investigation, and then Jennifer McCabe saying on the stand the other day, well, this is I don't know if I have that clip, but let's talk a little bit about Jennifer McCabe's testimony, because I think she's opened the door to some things. We talked about this off the air. She keeps changing her testimony. She's clearly been coached. I don't know if you watched any of her testimony from the first trial, but it's like a whole different person. Let's watch a couple of her clips and see if we can talk about those for a second.
Hence the advantage to the Commonwealth in a retrial.
Right. Great point. Here it is. So this is day 1 because she's in the striped shirt. She was on the stand for 3 days.
Other than those regular searches that one would do, is there anything remarkable about what you were searching at 2/2/27, that time frame?
No.
After you were looking at websites for your child's sports, what did you do?
I put my phone down and went to sleep.
And up to that point, had there been any discord or fighting or arguments in your world?
No.
Did anything remarkable happen in the early morning hours of January 29, 2022 that changed that peaceful mood into something else?
Yes.
I want you to share with the jury the first thing that happens that changes everything.
At 4:53, my phone rings and I look at my caller ID. I look at the phone and it's Kaylee, John's niece. John's niece. And I say hello. And she said, yeah, well, basically she relayed to me that. Next question.
When you pick up the phone, could you hear a voice on the other end?
I heard a voice and a lot of screaming.
And the voice you heard, is that Kaylee, John's niece?
Yes.
And the screaming, was it a man or a woman screaming?
It was a woman.
How loud was that person screaming?
Very loud.
Could you make out anything that person was saying as they were screaming?
My name was screamed a lot. And then the other individual ended up getting on the phone with me.
And who was that person that was screaming in the background?
Miss Read.
How long was she screaming for while you were speaking to your niece before you spoke to her?
The entire time I was speaking to Kaylee, she was screaming.
Describe her demeanor.
Miss Reed's?
Yes.
Jen! And then she's screaming that John didn't come home. She left him at the waterfall. She was hysterical. It was very hard to follow what she was saying.
You mentioned the first time that you had that phone call, the defendant was screaming your name. Jen,
Yes.
Jen. Was she saying your name in the second call, or was it just general screaming?
My name. And then when she got on the phone, I had told her, Karen, I saw you guys outside of my sister's house. And then she told me she didn't remember being there. And then she went on to say, she started saying, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? I don't. And then she just was just all over the place, like screaming my name, screaming so many different things. She was hard to follow or understand.
Is that how you testified last year?
So before we go on to day 2, she has no problem answering Brennan's questions, yes or no, right?
Right.
And you would imagine that he would prep her. She's the most important witness for the Commonwealth.
Yes.
I mean, I remember when you were telling us about your prep of Brian Camp and how long you prepped him and how hard you prepped him and how you had to cross-examine him like, you know, like an animal. I mean, not like you didn't say, those are my words, but
the night before, I was figuratively beating him up worse than he could ever imagine, and thankfully worse than AGA Gagne did on the stand. And he wanted to physically come over my desk at me because, yeah, you better be ready for everything.
Right. And she claims she wasn't prepped. That's malpractice on his part. If he didn't prep her, he's allowed to prep her. He's supposed to prep her. He can show her her grand jury testimony. She's allowed to read it ahead of time.
He has to prep her for the case, and to make sure that, you know, there isn't anything false going into the record that you know about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's all kinds of reasons why you need to prep your witnesses when somebody like Alan Jackson is fixing to cross-examine you for however many days and hours.
Right.
And I forget if I told you off screen, but I was yelling at Alan Jackson with the beginning of his cross-exam because it was my opinion that she knew how to respond to the way that he was asking them, open-ended, sort of conclusory questions. And now the judge is on him about it. And there's a specific objection by Brennan when he does that. And the judge is now telling the jury, like I told you before, it would be pretty amazing if he did not prepare her for Alan Jackson's cross-examination, and she was able to, in my opinion, I think that she scored a couple of points early on. I was like, wow, this is very different.
She was like a different person. I mean, the glow up was real. Let's watch. This is from day 2. So this was when you were screaming at the TV during this part of the cross, part of it maybe. This is a 2-minute clip. Let me know if you want me to stop it at any point.
Is that how you testified last year?
I'm sorry, would you mind just repeating it?
Sure.
Thank you.
You testified in substance that you were on the passenger side of the vehicle, and as you got out, quote, as I got out, end quote, she, Miss Reed, was already at John. You indicated that you saw her straddle him, lift up his shirt, lift up her shirt, and lay on top of him while Miss Roberts went over and removed snow from his face. That's how you testified last year, correct?
Exactly.
Is that how you testified last year?
I'm not sure. I know.
Next question.
Would it refresh your recollection if you look at a copy of your testimony from last year?
I don't think looking at it would refresh my memory. I know I might have used different words, but the bottom line is I got out of the car, went behind the car, went over, and Karen had done that.
Mr. Dave, I'm asking, do you think it would refresh your, if you don't have a good recollection of how you testified?
Yeah, this is where this is not on Alan Jackson. This is how you establish, this is how you lay the foundation for prior inconsistent statement, impeachment testimony, either with the question is, did you say that? I don't remember. Okay. So you don't remember saying that, correct? Or you don't remember what you testified to, correct? No. Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to read the transcript when he was dealing with reports of Proctor and that kind of stuff? That's a different ball of wax. That's harder to get into with like totem pole hearsay and stuff. Like, I'm not sure that Proctor's report is going to refresh my recollection of what I said, because now we know what happened with Proctor. So no. But if there's a transcript of your prior testimony, would it refresh your recollection to read what you testified to under oath last time? The answer is either yes or no. And it's sort of going round and round and round and round here.
And if
So
she says no, then what?
If she says no,
No, it
well,
wouldn't refresh my recollection to look at it. Because that's what she does here. And I
Right.
think she was coached to say that.
well, right. She was prepared. That this is where the preparation comes in, because nobody knows what prior memory refreshed is all about, just sitting on the witness stand.
Mm-hmm.
And so the answer then is, if the answer then is no, I mean, I forget what it is that he's got in his hand right there. Do you know if it's a grand jury?
I think it's testimony. It's her testimony from the first trial.
I would try to have her read the transcript.
Mm-hmm. Let's go on, because it keeps going. Because this was like pulling teeth. I'm like, not only is he a surgeon and his surgical precision of cross, but he has to be an oral surgeon, because it was like pulling teeth to get anything out of her.
Sitting on that witness stand. I'm asking you, think it would refresh your recollection to see your transcript from last year?
I don't need to see my transcript. I know what I know and I know what I remember. So
That's not my question. I'm not asking you what you remember now. I'm asking how you testified a year ago, man.
whether I said it was as we're fighting over silly words, whether I said as I got out of the car, we were there.
Words matter. They matter a lot.
Okay, so remember, Mr. Jackson, no comments. Ms. McKay, can you answer his question?
Okay.
Do you remember exactly how it is that you testified last year?
I do not know.
There it is.
She says no. Yeah.
Mayor Pro-
Yes.
Here we
Without
go.
showing it to her, can he just say, do you remember being asked this question
Thank you.
and giving this answer, and just read it to her?
Let's talk about that real quick.
Sure.
So that was, yeah, it doesn't continue there, but we have these little clips is all.
I would have tried to, at that point, say, okay, I'm going to show you this. This is the cover. This is your, will you agree with me that this is a transcript of your testimony on such and such a date? I'm going to direct your attention to here, and let's read this together. Here, Mr. Brennan asked you this. It should be able to be read as prior testimony. And you said, and have her read what it is that she said.
Right. And you gave this answer. And then she's got the whole abada explanation. And I feel like the judge just has no control over the courtroom. And they've gone to sidebar a million times during her testimony. And I'm sure he's making a record at sidebar. But it's like, at some point, it's like, Your Honor, just direct her to answer the question.
But if I might.
Yeah, you might. You will.
This is not a jury of robots.
Mm-hmm.
This is 9 women and 9 men, right? And it'll be cut down to whatever it is that have life experience and common sense. And there's a jury instruction that must be given to the jury when they go back out. And it is when you are evaluating evidence, specifically testimony from a witness, you can believe everything they said. You can believe some of what they said. You can believe none of what they said. And you can take into consideration, ladies and gentlemen, the way that the witness answered the question. Were they argumentative? Were they combative? Did it seem like they were hiding something? You can take all of that into consideration. So, though we're frustrated with not being able to get a witness to say what we want her to say when we know what the answer is, this whole thing right here is being watched by the 12 people who are going to decide whether they want to believe this witness or not, who, I forget what address it was.
34 Fairview?
Never went to the address and then suddenly was driving slowly by the address. that
Right.
was
Slow
shown.
4-minute drive.
So as frustrating as that can be, this, and I believe because Jackson is very experienced. I was reading some of his prosecution when he was a prosecutor cases.
The Phil Spector. Didn't he prosecute
yeah.
Phil Spector?
Yeah. None of this is going to waste.
Yeah.
Whether she ultimately answers the question or not, they're going to be able to look at how she is interacting with him. And he is, even when he's pissed, cool. And I see that when he gets very mad, his I don't know if he's Irish, I'm half Irish, but you can see a little bit of, and maybe that's why he grew his beard. His cheeks get red. And he has sort of a terseness in his voice, but it's never really raised, and it's not. It's I'm learning some tactics from him in that regard. So I don't stress out too much about this, but it is the key, the benefit that the defense has, if there's ever an advantage in a retrial. It is prior testimony and being able to impeach different stories, and there are clearly different stories.
And won't they also get an instruction that if you find that the witness has lied about one thing, you are allowed to disregard their entire testimony? Do you have that instruction in Massachusetts? Because that's what we have here.
Well, it's more along the lines of, like I said, you can believe everything, you can believe some of it, or you don't have to believe any of it, depending on.
She's already been caught in how many lies? Let's listen to this little clip. This one's only 2 minutes. This was from her third day. This was just from Friday.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Sure.
She didn't answer the phone, did she?
No, she didn't.
So you have a situation where a man is laying.
So this is at the scene. This is when they find John O'Keefe's body. She calls 911, and then she calls her sister twice. There's an 8-second call and a 7-second call. And she did not go in the house to get anyone or to see if they were okay.
I'm sorry, and I'm just listening to Alan Jackson sort of get a little excited in his voice right here. Go ahead.
I know. I wish we had a camera on him and a camera on her, but we don't. So let's just take that from the top.
He's got fantastic suits, by the way. Very well fitted.
Meticulous. The sartorial splendor is only on par with you. All right, here we go.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Sure.
She didn't answer the phone, did she?
No, she didn't.
So you have a situation where a man is laying dead or dying in the front yard of your sister's house. You see nothing in terms of life inside the house. Lights aren't coming on. They're not getting up. They're certainly not coming outside, right?
They were sound asleep.
They weren't coming outside, were they?
Because they were asleep.
You didn't know if they were asleep. All you
Can you
knew
stop it right
was
there?
a severely injured.
The answer to that question is no, they didn't.
Right.
They're sound asleep. Like, how?
She likes to embellish. She likes to add things. I feel like she's got talking points and she wants to make sure she gets them out, whether it's responsive to the question or not.
I don't think they're her talking points.
That's what I mean. That there was a timeline they made.
But it's also, to whatever extent, victim witness advocates and prosecutors prepare their witnesses. There's nothing that's being said that is not known by the prosecution. There's not a question being asked right now, at least, that was not prepared for.
Right. Because this has been a big, huge point. Why did Brian Albert never come out of the house when all of these lights are outside his window and they have a dog who should have been barking, who now she admits she did not see in the morning, which adds a whole nother layer to this.
It is a very interesting part of the case.
Right. Let's continue with this.
Man on the front lawn of their house, and your sister didn't answer the phone, not once, but twice. Correct?
He's yelling.
Correct. She didn't answer the phone.
Did you think your sister might have been in peril? Did you think to go inside the house and check that they're okay?
I had no reason to think that they weren't okay.
You had no reason to believe they weren't okay. A man was dead or dying on their lawn, and your sister's not answering the phone. And nobody is coming out to the chaos of Karen Read screaming on the front lawn. You didn't think there was some reason to believe they could have been in peril?
I didn't, because your client was screaming she hit him. She had a cracked taillight. She was crying she hit him. I didn't, but my focus.
So now it's a cracked taillight again, instead of like a shattered taillight with missing pieces, which she had said before. And again, all the talking points are coming out. She said I hit him. She has a cracked taillight.
Which is why, in my opinion, there was no objection, because if I was the prosecutor, I would have objected to that question in its form, which is a reason why when I yell at Alan Jackson, I was going to say Andrew Jackson, Alan Jackson, through your podcast, it kind of opens doors for what I expect was stuff that they're expecting. But there was no objection on that one, which interests me, because I think that they were ready for the question, and this is the response.
Brennan was very, very quiet for what turned out to be like almost 2 full days across. You didn't hear from him much at all. He objected very infrequently, maybe 3 times.
Combination of probably thinking that everybody that there was good preparation, that he was confident in his witness, and not wanting to make the jury think he's trying to hide anything that she's got to say.
Let's keep going.
Can I finish, please?
You had solved the crime right then and there. You solved the whole case.
No, I didn't. I knew John never came in the house, so I had no concern for anyone's safety inside.
How did you know John never came in the house even after you left if you didn't call your sister? And then we find out that there's this new call that she made to her sister at 5:07 right after Karen called her for 38 seconds. That didn't come out during the last trial. That, I think, came out earlier. I'm not sure if we have a clip of that. But that puts a whole new spin on things. If she got a hold of her sister at 5:07 a.m. before ever getting together with Karen and spoke to her for 38 seconds, she would have known that they were okay. Hey, Karen's looking for John. What do you need me to do? There could have been a 38-second conversation. Is a pretty long time to have a conversation. Or she could have passed the phone to her husband, Brian, 30-year veteran of the Boston PD, who, by the way, was on the fugitive task force, which deals with dangerous criminals every single day, right?
Yes.
So a reasonable person in that situation pulls up to her sister's house, finds her dead dear friend of 10 years on lawn. Wouldn't you be like, holy mother of the traveling Mary, I got to run inside and make sure my sister and her family are okay, that there's no more people dead in the house?
And right there, you did a perfect pocket of a closing argument where I would prefer this type of questioning be placed. But Mr. Jackson certainly knows what he's doing. And I became convinced there's a method to, if you want to call it, madness.
Yeah. Yeah, he knew what he was doing. I thought that too. I thought that there was a lot of criticism online about him and by other law troopers on like on the Wednesday day. And I was just like, yeah, just wait. He knows what he's doing. He's setting her up like a bowling pin, letting her think she's got the upper hand, letting her think she's winning to knock it all down on Friday.
There's also, in my experience, in a case like this, when there's so many documents and transcripts and reports that you are trying to keep in order and in your mind as to when you're going to use it and what was said when and all that kind of stuff. I did a civil trial a couple of weeks ago, and as you know, in civil cases, there's interrogatories, production of documents, depositions and admissions and all kinds of discovery where there's all kinds of good stuff. And it had been about a year since the last time I did a civil trial. And it took me a few, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 minutes to sort of get my legs under me, to put it together and remember where everything is and not have papers flying everywhere. So I don't know if that's
Yeah.
something, if that's something that he experienced or not, but this is a guy who, I mean, he's got his helpers, but he's the man. He's got this witness who is huge, and he's got
And she's
most
a
of the
very difficult witness.
weight on his shoulders.
And she's a very difficult witness. She will not answer a question. Everything is a fight. That's where the good trial binder comes in. That's why you need a good trial binder with all your tabs and all your, like Alessi comes up with these trial binders that are beautiful. Everything is tabbed. He knows where everything is. I feel like he's got like an incredible memory too. I feel like he's got a photographic memory, Alessi. He just knows where everything is. He knows where to find it. You got to be so organized. Let's play this out.
Inside the house.
The reason you didn't go inside the house is because you knew better. You knew better. You knew she wasn't in peril. You knew that Brian Albert wasn't in peril. You weren't worried at all about them, were you?
I was not worried at all because something happened on the front lawn that had nothing to do with anything inside that house.
You weren't
How do you
worried
know?
about them at all.
Right. How
because
do you know?
knew what really happened, didn't you, Inspector?
At that moment, I didn't know that he was hit by a vehicle and there was taillight found next to him.
That's all I have.
I
I was gonna
didn't
say
know
that's
that
a
he
good-
was hit by a vehicle and that there was taillight found next to him. Did she see any tail? I would have said, did you see any taillight around his body? I mean, there's no wrong answer to that question. If she says yes, why didn't you tell any first responders that? If she says no, it wasn't there. And we really don't even know where his body was because nobody ever took measurements or photographs or anything else. Here's the nefarious clip.
Nefarious.
You're aware that your phone records actually show that at 5:07, you called the 34 Fairview Nicole Albert's phone, correct?
Correct. There's nothing about me calling my sister that is nefarious, and I feel like you're insinuating it might be, and it's not.
Were you and your family coordinating some sort of damage control
Not
in
insinuating.
terms of the language that your family would use to the public, to the press, to law enforcement?
No.
You certainly did not expect when you were writing those texts that the defense, Ms. Karen Read's representatives, would ever get a hold of those texts. That was not in your mind, correct?
Would never have been in my mind, no.
That is a textbook example, what we've just seen, of witnesses colluding with one another
I love
about
that.
a subject matter that's under investigation, correct?
That might have been the one of the times that he did object. And I thought that was beautiful. I loved that so much. Because isn't that textbook collusion?
Could be.
Tell him the guy never went in the house. The first time she said nefarious, which is interesting because Brennan used that during one of the pretrial hearings. He pronounced it that way, and we know because we talked about it a lot afterwards. And then she said after Alan Jackson said nefarious, she said nefarious. She adopted his pronunciation, probably remembering, there's a nickname for Buchanan, which I don't say on this channel because I didn't know what it was. And then
I forget where I heard that,
unfortunately, I Googled
conversation.
it. Julie Albert said that on the stand, that foul language or dirty name for him, as if she had been watching all of the coverage of Turtle Boy. It was wild. And then I did something interesting. I Googled Haas Long to Die in Cold. I had never done it before. Look at the results for Haas Long to Die in Cold. Because she claims, Karen said, Google hypothermia. Why wouldn't you just Google hypothermia, right? Why would you Google Haas Long to Die in Cold? Here's what comes up. First thing that comes up now in today's day and age, 3 years later, is the suicide hotline or crisis network. But look, hypothermia. Did she do the search and it pointed to hypothermia, and then she wound up just, saying Karen told me to Google hypothermia? I just find that to be so odd. And the results are that you could die within 15 minutes of hypothermia. So if you were Googling hypothermia, you would have Googled hypothermia if that's what she allegedly screamed at you to Google. But Carrie Roberts, we now know, lied to the grand jury when she said that she heard Karen say that. And she didn't. So let's talk about perjury a little bit, because then she said, oh, I just misunderstood the question. You think anybody would prosecute in a general way? Are people prosecuted for perjury in Massachusetts ever? Have you ever seen it?
I have. Have I ever seen it? Yes.
Yeah.
Probably 2 cases that I've seen. Frequently, it is done, and I think the 2 that I do know of, they were both a while ago. One was my former business partner had somebody who was accused of not being truthful to the grand jury when she was brought in about the location of or having contact with a certain person, and they were trying to find this person's body. They knew that they were dead, and there was actually video of it was refuting what was testified to the grand jury, like clearly, and it extended the period of time it took for law enforcement to find this body. And that type of situation, law enforcement gets very upset, and you're going to be prosecuted for perjury. And there's a specific, I forget the name of the charge, but there's also a specific statute that on top of perjury that you can be prosecuted under for delaying, sort of impeding the investigation. So rarely.
Interesting. But it was for lying to a grand jury specifically.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was interesting how, she claimed to have misunderstood the question.
And so very hard to prove, especially when somebody follows up with, I misunderstood the question.
Right. People in the chat might not know, but a grand jury is one-sided. It involves only the prosecutor. The defense isn't there. And typically, if you have a client and they're convening a grand jury on your client, you don't know about it, right? Do they tell you?
They're not supposed to. Federal-wise, no, unless your client gets a target letter, and you don't go in and cooperate. You might as well get ready for the grand jury to be investigating your client. In district court, if the case starts in district court, as most cases do start in district court, the dates are the next. If it's a felony that's not prosecutable in district court, like there's no final jurisdiction, like murder, you can't prosecute a murder in district court. It's got to be indicted. So that's coming. That's going to happen, and at some point there's going to be an indictment, and the case is going to go to superior court. So in state court, you pretty much kind of know if things start in district court. If there's an indictment going on that's skipping over district court, if that's happening, you usually don't know that's going on. That's being done quietly for a reason.
Karen was arrested February 1st of 2022 around 7:30 p.m., which was the same day that text message thread. There was a text message here.
If she pleads out.
I have a clip of this. Yeah, I have a clip of this. Let's show this. Thank you to Juju Bean, who posted a clip actually of my show of this clip, and that's the only one that I have, so I'm going to play it. It's going to look weird with us next to the screen and me, but it is what it is.
Who's this responsive text from?
This is from Matt, myself, Nicole, and Brian.
And what's the timestamp on this?
4:35.
What does this read?
Yep. If she pleads out, it will end. If she fights it, it will be an episode.
Who's she?
I'm assuming that would be Miss Read.
Next text, please.
And that's it. I mean, that was at 4:35, the day of her arrest. She was arrested around 7:30 and she was arraigned in Stoughton District Court on February 2nd of 22. That text to me is so damning.
Who did that come from?
Matt McCabe, her husband, to the group of Jen McCabe, Nicole Albert, and Brian Albert.
That's not good for the Commonwealth.
Not good.
That is not good for the Commonwealth.
On the day of her arrest, that same day, Julie Albert, who's the mother of Colin Albert, everyone try and keep it straight, texts Michael Proctor's sister and says, "Tell your brother when this is all over, I want to get him a thank you gift." The judge has ruled that Colin Albert is not allowed to be named as a third-party culprit.
I saw that.
All of these things, when you put it all together, and hopefully they're going to get more than an hour for closing, because I thought an hour time limit on closing last time was ridiculous. This was a 9-week trial.
So if I might stop you right there,
Please
because you have answered the question that I have had as to why Alan Jackson is asking the questions the way that he is. I keep saying, that's for closing. That's for closing. I didn't realize she only allowed an hour for closing. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yes. Lally got cut off in the middle of his John Adams quote.
I saw that. By the way, I don't know why he's not the prosecutor again. I found him to be, although my favorite comment about me on Court TV comments, or it was on your, was that I was clearly, what did it say? Rather dull, but got the job done.
I didn't think you were dull. Oh, please. You should hear what they say about me. If I cried about every comment about me, I'd be crying all day. I mean, the trolls involved in this case are insane.
I thought he was effective when I went back. It was kind of a typical prosecutor, Joe Webb from an old show, just a facts man.
Mm-hmm. When he gets up now, I get excited that he's back. I never thought I'd be wanting to see Lally more than I've been wanting to see him during this trial, because, as I told you, Brennan feels to me, in my opinion, to be just evil, dirty. Like, this is really personal to him. Like, why does he want to see her convicted so badly? Why? Aren't prosecutors supposed to be after the truth, not just a conviction? Why wouldn't he welcome? He said, "I welcome ARCA. I'm not afraid of ARCA. I welcome them in. I can't wait for them to testify," and that he did everything in his power to keep them out.
Prosecutor's job is not to get a conviction. Prosecutor's job is to make sure that justice is done. It is an obviously incredibly powerful position, which is why there's things called like an Odell motion, which is a motion to dismiss if the Commonwealth does not show the grand jury exculpatory evidence that exists as well as inculpatory. Like, that's how fair you're supposed to be.
Right.
Like, you got to show juries everything that you got to be fair. The first question I ask the lead investigator in a big case, and let's just say I have a drunk driving case where it's 1 or 2 witnesses normally with field sobriety test. The first question I ask those officers is, in your training, you are trained that part of your job is that you are supposed to be fair to the person that you are investigating when asking them to do field sobriety tests, when questioning them, when investigating the case. There's got to be fairness because of the immense power that the Commonwealth has to put you in prison. And, the answer is yes to that question. We are trained that we have to be fair. And if I find things that don't seem particularly fair in the investigation or the testimony, it's my job to exploit that.
What do you think about these alleged Brady violations of the Commonwealth not turning over all of this Sallyport video that they now admit they had before the first trial? And the judge, I don't know if you saw her ruling on the motion to dismiss, threw Michael Proctor under the bus and said he had it. He put it in a drawer somewhere. It's all on him that it wasn't turned over. Any thoughts on that? Or are you not up to speed on what exactly went on? Because a whole bunch more video was turned over after the first trial.
Well, you just
You just froze up on me. Come back into the light. Did he freeze up for you guys too? Oh, wait. Hold on. There's a glitch in the Matrix. I think you're back now. What had happened was.
What I said was fantastic too. Sorry you missed it.
I hate when that happens. I hate when that happens.
I
Tell
had
me again.
asked. I was thinking, did they file a motion to dismiss for the and the judge ruled that it was all on.
Oh, it's in
and-
the order. I'll send it to you. We'll talk about that in another show then, because I want you to read this. Because when I read this on the air, my head popped off and rolled down the street.
but obviously denied it.
Yeah. Oh, it was denied. And jury tampering issues in the first trial because this guy Fanning, who was Proctor's supervisor, may or may not have been in charge of the jury. And one of the jurors who was totally, obviously, because of her facial expressions, free Karen Read, was dismissed right before closings based on Trooper Fanning hearing from a guy who heard from a guy who heard from a guy who may have seen the juror a month before at the American Legion Hall talking about being on the jury. No hearing. She was just dismissed. Like, yeah, we'll talk about that another time because that is enough for a whole show. And I don't want to keep you here all day. And I have a hard stop today too. So let's get to some questions. And if you guys have questions for Tom, please put them in the chat. Thank you. Sorry, I don't remember my lies. You changed your name. Good afternoon, Melanie Goldwinner. You're the best. I just want to say sorry for long latte messages. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And good for you for doing planks today. JT says, John O'Keefe, no coat on in a snowstorm after bar and car. I know a lot of men, and probably not you, Tom, because you probably have a really nice custom made overcoat or, pea coat or wool, dress coat and some maybe Canadian Goose down.
No,
jackets.
TJ Maxx.
Most men I don't know a lot of men who wear a winter coat. They're like, no, I'm not a wuss. I can go from the car to the house or to the car to the bar without a big puffy coat on. I don't need one. So that doesn't seem unusual to me. Does that seem unusual to you?
That they don't wear a coat?
Yeah, that he wasn't wearing a coat in a snowstorm.
No, I don't find that unusual.
There was also DNA. They found his DNA outside the housing of the taillight. And my theory is that after they came out of the bar, you think maybe he might have wiped the snow off the taillights because that's what he does. And also, many police officers during traffic stops, it is their custom and habit to touch the taillights. In case
put their
anything
fingerprints.
happens. Right.
Mhm.
Right. That's true, right?
Yep.
I didn't make that up, right? Oh, good.
No.
How is them destroying phones close to Wolf's text? I'm not sure what you're asking me here, but
the victim witness advocates.
apparently the victim witness advocate gave them the okay to destroy their phones. He's on the witness list. Can the victim witness advocate be forced to testify about his communication? There's no privilege, right?
No. Oh no. I have subpoenaed victim witness advocates and notes and all that stuff.
Oh, good. Oh, good. That should be a fun day.
Well, and it's also, as I said, I was one.
Right. That's what I know. That's why I'm asking you.
In the homicide unit. And, they take advantage of law students. Most of us who were victim witness advocates in the homicide unit were law students at the time. And you learn how to, I was involved in helping prep, like doing a mock cross-examination or direct examination, that kind of stuff. But victim witness advocates by statute, because there's a statute, the Victims' Bill of Rights, I think it's 258, empowers, the victims with the rights that they should have. And the victim witness advocate, their job is basically a liaison between the victims, obviously specifically for homicide cases, which is, those are tough cases to be a victim witness advocate, but victim witness advocates are not making those decisions.
This guy, Steve Nelson, he's been around the block. He's not a law student. You know what I mean? Like, he's been doing this, I don't know for how long, maybe someone in the chat knows, but very experienced. So in your opinion, it wouldn't be unusual for witnesses like Jen McCabe to be assigned the victim witness advocate. And does he handle or she handle all of the witnesses in this particular case? Would they be assigned to all the witnesses in this case?
depends. That I'm assuming that they may have more than one victim witness advocate for all
Okay.
of these witnesses, because your job as a victim witness advocate is to be the liaison for the victim's family. That's a different job. Keeping that, they have the right to be notified of court dates. They have the right to be notified of decisions that are being made. They have the right to have impact statements when there are sentences going on. There is a whole list of rights enumerated for the victims, as there should be.
Mhm.
And the victim witness advocate, I had two jobs. And I actually, before I came on, I reread the statute to see if maybe it changed empowering them with, I could not imagine empowering a victim witness advocate to make a decision, to be able to make a decision to tell a witness it's okay to destroy your phones. That would have to come from the prosecutor. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this DA's office runs things differently. But trial time, your job is to coordinate the witnesses. It's actually a very important job come trial time as well,
Mhm.
because you got one prosecutor or two prosecutors and 150 people listed as witnesses. And let's assume you're only calling half of them. The DA is not going to be able to handle everything that's going on without help. Like, basically, okay, Tom, call Mrs. X, tell her that she is going to be called as a witness 2 days from now. Call Mr.
Mhm.
Y, tell him, and coordinate their transportation, all that kind of stuff. If they need taxis, if they need an Uber or something, make sure that they're here, put them up in the place that they're supposed to be put up. Expert witnesses, I was in charge of making sure about their travel and their lodging and making sure that they get there and all that kind of stuff. So it's actually it's a pretty important job, but I never had the power to do that.
Jennifer McCabe also testified during the first trial that there were some conference calls with the victim witness advocate whenever there was harassment happening. She tried really hard to get that in, but she stayed away from it, which I was surprised. I thought she was going to try to organically throw in how much she had been harassed, but she didn't do it.
You're going to get a hold of
Any
your
thoughts on
victim.
that?
You're going to get a hold of the victim witness advocate before you're going to get a hold of a prosecutor quickly.
Yeah.
And if it was, by the end of, before I became a student prosecutor, I had been a victim witness advocate for 3 years in the homicide unit and sort of knew how it all ran, and was, myself and other victim witness advocates were a pretty important part of that whole machine. So yeah, I'd be involved in conference calls just to be able to talk about what was talked about once the call was over, if they didn't
Yeah.
understand what was happening.
So that wouldn't be uncommon. Kim says this wasn't ruled a homicide, though. Brings me to another question that I wanted to ask you. Have you ever defended a homicide case in which the manner of death on the death certificate of the victim was undetermined?
I've never had one of those cases myself, but I've seen them.
Okay. Interesting. Because that's a big part. And apparently the Commonwealth is not going to call that medical examiner back to the stand. Proctor and Buchanan tried to get her to change that manner of death from undetermined to homicide for many, many times. Many, many times. She wouldn't do it. Mr. and Mrs. Smith says, thanks for your 20. Mel, Jen McCabe had a coach and she's a good manipulator. She seemed very credible for people who had not seen the first trial. Jen was telling the truth. So sad. Maybe there's a lot of people who were watching this trial are with us for the first time. We've had like north of 20,000 people on Friday. We've had a really big crowd for this trial, and a lot of people are first time Karen Read trial watchers. And I did ask that specific question. I said, if you did not watch Jen McCabe's testimony during the first trial, what do you think now? And they said she keeps changing her story. She doesn't seem credible. So I think it's kind of all over the place, but that's a great question. And maybe we'll do a poll one day this week. Go ahead.
That's what I was saying. Even though he's not able to get the ultimate answer out of her, the way that she is answering it is the jury's able to take into consideration.
It's sus. Why did you lie to the FBI when they came to interrogate you? Why did you lie about who you were? Why did you lie about the 5 people that you called in those 10 minutes? Why did you call the DA's office? And she says, I called my victim witness advocate. That's her story for that. On top says, this attorney, Tom Kokonowski, is a winner. What justice he got for the case we watched together. Thanks for having him. Oh, that's nice. Homegrown
Very
alligator.
nice. Thank you.
Did you see DUI guy's video on Arca's voir dire, Brennan and Auntie Bev using nonverbal communication? That's what we just showed earlier. Do you think it's collusion? I think we're both agreed that I don't think it is.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't either. That would be just way too obvious with all those cameras there. I just, I mean, it's Mama She. Thanks for the 10. Hiya, Tom. How's our George Clooney doing?
George Clooney knew that this was happening, and he was all over me. He was walking back and forth on the desk, and he was in the way when I was trying to figure out how to make this look anything like okay. And then right before we came on, he left. So, but he's doing well.
And here's another one. Hates me, says, love Tom, Mrs. Cap, but he's so smart and engaging. Thanks for this. I hope Mr. Camp is doing okay.
Mr. Camp is doing very well. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago. He's good, and he was kind enough to write a Google review.
Oh, it's always good to get a good Google review.
Yeah.
Brooke and Brian got married after the verdict, right?
I think the date is set, but it hasn't happened yet.
Oh, good. But they got engaged. So we were so happy about that. We adopted him as our collective son. Anonymous Virtue says, and I think this is about Whiffen, he was a cop in the UK, who are so corrupt. I don't know about the cops in the UK. Programmer, there is communication, in my opinion. Not sure what you're referring to. Tom, do you know about Proctor? Says Terry.
I do. And it's I was talking about the advantage that the Commonwealth has in man and woman power and money and all kinds of scientists, and it's frightening that the lead investigator in a second-degree homicide case did that stuff to the degree that he was terminated. And so my question, I saw Mr. Brennan in an argument talking about, I just want the truth to come out, when he was talking about ARCA, and he was beating up on the defense. Whether you believe he said that he wanted to he's just looking for the truth and wants to make sure that everything is going to come out. I'm interested to see who calls him.
Me too.
Who calls Trooper Proctor.
Me too. Because they tried to walk him away from being the lead investigator at the last trial because they knew this was coming. But how hard is it to get terminated as a Massachusetts state trooper? Pretty hard. Right. Have you ever represented anybody in front of the Massachusetts trial board? The MSP trial board? You need a special admission for that. Because this took 3 trial days, and it was only once a month for 3 months.
No, I have represented local police in front of their individual boards, but not state police. I've represented a couple of troopers. One of the sets of troopers doesn't have a union, so they don't have a union rep. So I've helped a couple of troopers, not in criminal stuff, but other stuff. But I've never represented anybody in front of the state police. To be honest, I was surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised if he wasn't let go, but I also wasn't surprised that he was.
They needed a fall guy. Terry, thanks for that. Kelly asked Alessi to stand up and answer her questions about ethics. And as soon as he begins, she says, never mind, I'm going to give it to you. What was her point in even asking for his response? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's the one where he was about to say, yeah, but that rule doesn't really
apply here.
And that was that. And she
knew.
And that's, good on him. As whether you think she's fair or not, she's clear. She's consistent. That's what I asked for in a judge.
Mm-hmm.
If you are going to be what I perceive as unfair to me and my client, if you're consistent about it, it's like in baseball. If you're calling that pitch that's off of the plate on the outside a strike, you better be calling it a strike for everyone. I'm not going to complain if you're doing it for everyone. And I can see why people get frustrated, but there's no time to be frustrated as the lawyer when that's going on. You have to adapt, and Alessi adapts. And now I know, in my own opinion, you answered it for me because I didn't realize they only had an hour.
Yeah.
An hour
Isn't
for
that insane?
closings for all of that evidence. And that's why in my head, I'm like, that is for closing. That is for
Mhm.
closing. I did not know it was only an hour. Now I get it.
Yeah, makes sense now, right? CPU
Yep.
Mod 1, thanks for your Cash App, says, thanks, Tom. It was a big win. Thank you, CPU Mod 1. Kelly has a follow-up. Okay, now I'm confused. She says, is Mr. K saying jurors are told by a judge to believe or not believe a witness's testimony? Then what is a juror supposed to rely on? Witnesses are sworn to tell the truth, right?
They are sworn to tell the truth, and the jurors are supposed to rely on their life experience and common sense, which I expect the judge has in the last trial used that phrase and will use this phrase. You don't check your common sense and life experience at the doorway to the jury deliberation room. This is all a very big example of the human condition. And like the guy who was criticizing me on court TV was trying to say that, trying the case in front of robots versus humans, they're humans. They get to use their life experience to look at a witness and say, I don't believe her. I don't believe that part of what she said, but I do believe that part. Or, oh, yeah, she was credible in the way that she answered and what it was that she answered. And she fought, yeah, but the lawyer was being a jerk. Or, why would she fight that simple answer? The answer was clear. Why would you fight that? That's the stuff that jurors get to, are they sweating? Are they shifting around in the witness chair? Are they like physically, how are they doing it? Are they fighting? Are they angry? And whether that's good or bad for their credibility, that's what they get to use.
And that's interesting too. That's the reason that they're in this really tiny courtroom, is because initially, before the first trial, it was supposed to be in the big courtroom, where Sacco and Vanzetti were tried all the way back in whatever that was, the 1920s. But the way the jury box is situated, half of the jury was looking at the back of the witness's head. And Alan Jackson made a motion. So we got to move to a different room. This is no good. And she said, well, that's the way it's been done here for 100 years, Mr. Jackson. And he said, well, I don't care how it's been done for 100 years. The jurors need to see the witness's face. And I agree. I mean, how do you assess someone's credibility if you can't see their face?
That actually would potentially be a grounds for appeal if that happened, because I expect to hear that jury instruction pretty early on in the instructions.
Apparently,
you get to look at somebody's face as they're testifying.
And face your accusers.
That too.
TCP DKK from Denmark, I think, says -5 Celsius is 23 Fahrenheit. I think the 32 is a typo, but also sloppy. No, I think I think we're talking about Whiffen. I think it was in Celsius. Part of the chart was like this. The left side was in Celsius. The right was in Fahrenheit. But when asked the question, what is Fahrenheit freezing? Because something was, I don't remember, 33 or 34 degrees. And he said, well, it's below freezing. And then Alessi said, I'm sorry, Mr. Whiffen, do you know what freezing is? And he was very nice to him in Fahrenheit. And he said, no, I don't know.
Alessi said, that's below freezing, isn't it, Mr. Whiffen? And he said, no, it's above freezing when it was under 32 degrees. And I was like, oh my God, this guy doesn't know what Fahrenheit
really bad.
is.
And people were like, give him a break. He's from Canada. I'm like, he's testifying in the US. It's
in a murder trial.
Right, in a murder trial. Nikki says, I think Jen McCabe got worried John could still be alive after she saw the EMTs working on him. I don't think she was trying to recreate her 2 a.m. search, in my opinion. That's another great point. But why did she type it in twice? Because if you type in like how long to DI and CIKD, I bet you get the same exact results as how long to die in cold, I would imagine. Why does Jen assume Karen and John were fighting? I don't know. I don't know, Michelle. If anybody in the chat wants to help her on that. This is her story. It's morphed. It is morphed. I don't think that she ever testified that they were fighting about anything at the bar. I don't know if it was that she claimed that she said something in the morning on the phone that they had a fight, or if she said in the car that they had a fight. But again, all the words of Jen McCabe. Mr. Hanky Brennan says, if for some reason a mistrial happens and we have a third trial, would you join Karen's team? Are you talking to me or Tom? I like what I'm doing right here. Perfectly fine. I have no interest. Tom, maybe I'll toss that to you. If they asked you to join her team, would you join her team?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to work with all of those lawyers.
Good.
And the client. I don't know any of them, but yeah.
It
It's,
is. And, I have a lot of law students that watch the channel, and I've been saying this, screaming into a closet, since I was a very, very tiny channel until now that we're growing. And the best way to become a good trial lawyer is to watch other good trial lawyers. And you're still doing it. We're still doing it. The best thing for law students, when we were in law school, there was no court. I mean, Court TV didn't even exist. Court TV really came around when the OJ trial happened. And then we were finally able to watch. But I went to the courthouse in my spare time. I'd sit around, find out where the good trials were, and go watch, because they really don't teach you that in law school.
yeah,
We had a
and that-
student law office also at University of Denver, where I went to law school. And so I was able to represent clients in court the same way you did under whatever statute you said in Massachusetts. But they
203.
don't really teach trial practice so much. And you have to learn by doing and watching.
And everything from trial, tactics. I mean, you can become obsolete as you get older in this business, when experience is the most valuable thing that I have for a client, that I've
Right.
been at it. I'm an old man, but for purposes of this business, I'm kind of in my prime. Who knew that 59 for a baseball player is, drop dead years. 59 for a trial lawyer. And I read, as I was researching Alan Jackson, that he was born in 1965. So I did not
And
realize.
I heard Bob Alessi is mid-60s.
That's
65.
crazy.
Yeah,
He looks great.
I know.
Just the curly
I
shot.
mean, you're just hitting your stride now. I mean, look at Garagos. He's still out there. He's still doing the thing.
Hitting my stride with 2 brand new hips, by the way. So literally hitting my stride.
That's right. Ain't So Plain Jane said, I would love to hear Tom's thoughts on the witness intimidation statute and the Commonwealth allegedly still pursuing it for Karen Read. Do you know about the witness intimidation statute?
I have represented people who have been charged with intimidation of a witness. I don't know about the only contact I have with that charge in this case is Turtle Boy stuff. Isn't he indicted on that stuff?
But they also tried to indict Karen and Aiden Turtle Boy Carney for conspiracy to commit witness intimidation in March 2024. That grand jury did not indict the ham sandwich of Karen Read and Aiden Carney, but they say they still may pursue. That's a whole topic for another show. Thanks, Izzy, for your 10. Lena, something that has bothered me is how they brought Garino in to testify for short bits and pieces. Could it be so Jen Celebrite report wasn't in for her testimony? No, it's actually because the Commonwealth moved to have a reader come in and read all those text messages, and the judge said no. So since Garino did I think he keeps saying he didn't do the extraction on Jen's phone, but he extracted Karen and John's phone. He's the one who's got to read them. Brendan wants to read them at different points during the trial, so he has to keep coming back. And they're saving, I guess, Alessi. I think it's Alessi who's going to do the cross on that for some point later in the trial. Interesting to you? Have you ever seen that happen, where they keep calling a witness back just to read text messages? Thanks, Karen.
Did you just ask me a question?
Have you ever seen that, where they keep calling a trooper back in at different points during the trial to read text messages like that?
I've never been involved in something like that. No. Let's
do the timeline again. It says per 1.0, Carrie is CPR certified and did CPR until EMT said, we'll take it from here. Why say Jen did CPR? I don't know. It's just another thing that Alan Jackson or whoever does the closing, will weave together in the closing. Collusion, not collision. Oh, well done on the username. I like it. The only thing I think AJ missed was to connect the lies at the end. Call to Nicole at 507. Group text update tomorrow. Yeah. And going to length the next day. Yeah. Again, that's for closing. It's going to be hard to do with a witness like that who doesn't want to answer questions, right?
I'm interested in the 7 butt dials.
The 7 butt dials. Denise, what about Jen lying to the FBI and then saying that the FBI is no longer watching this trial? She's got some splaining to do. Matt's plea or fight text was 3 hours before Karen's arrest. Yes, you're right.
That is really something.
Yeah. Pro Gamer says Jen contacts DA Marcy directly. She doesn't need to go through her witness advocate. The FBI is still investigating, in my opinion. Tom seems so familiar. I graduated from Hampshire College in 1986.
Uh-oh.
Did you hang around at Hampshire College?
I used to live in Northampton.
Maybe the one bar in Amherst at the time.
Oh, there's more than one bar in Amherst, that's for sure.
Well, now, I mean, a couple. Yeah, it's kind of like a 1 block bar town, right? I mean, when I
Yeah.
took one of my kids to look at colleges for the first time, who's now, in his 30s, I said, all right, I'm going to take you to what they say is the best college town in the U.S., Amherst, Massachusetts. Let's go. And we go, and it's 1 block. And then I said, okay, now we're going to Boulder. And you tell me what you think the better college town is. No shade to Amherst at all.
So
We love
while
Hampshire
on,
County.
while
they,
on, while on that, I wore that for you.
Oh, the Trinity Bantams. Yeah.
There you
Tom
go.
and I were at freshman year together at Trinity College in Hartford in the same dorm. We lived.
Was
We
it
don't remember.
Jones? Was it Jones or
Yeah, it was
yeah,
Jones.
Jones.
And then I left and hightailed it out of there to Boulder because I was a hippie and all those
You're a
kids
big
were
school
right out of
girl.
prep school. They were so rich, those kids. I couldn't take it. It was so small. I was like, does anybody know where the Grateful Dead is? Do you remember the Ramones played on spring weekend,
I watched them. I was there.
freshman year?
Yep.
And it was like 120 degrees and they were all wearing black leather head to toe.
Do you know who I drank with? One of the I think it was the senior thing, was the singer for Till Tuesday.
That they also played. Till Tuesday played the same year as the Ramones, right?
I went to the College View Cafe with them. She
That was
fun.
fun.
Yeah.
Brush with greatness.
Yeah.
Bluebird
She
Mama
did have
says,
one.
Tom,
she had
how
a
does
brush
the
with greatness.
she what?
She had a brush with greatness.
Oh,
Go
all
ahead.
right. We'll get more of that story later. Tom, how does the defense best deal with the 1 hour closing rule? We don't know if it's going to be a rule. They got to ask for more time. Is that a thing?
Yeah. I mean, the judge has discretion, but
The gatekeeper.
on Brian's case, the judge asked us how long. If I'm not mistaken,
Or
and
how long?
I'm sure how long. I'm sure I'll be corrected. I think the statute, there's a statute that, or a rule that talks about 30 minutes could be the amount, but the judge has discretion. And an hour that's
Not for a 9-week trial.
it is clear to me, in my opinion, why Alan Jackson is asking the questions the way he is.
What do you think about not showing the bingo balls for alternate jurors? Yeah, that was weird. Melanie Little's left swipe in StreamYard. So here's what happened when they put all those numbers for all the jurors into the bingo thing and they pulled them out.
Yep.
This clerk, first of all, we watched another trial in a courtroom right next door to this one in the same building. Margaret was the clerk. She put out all the little balls so that all the attorneys could see that every single person's number was in there, put them in the drum, and as she pulled them out, she held them up for all to see. This clerk, during Karen Read's trial, spun it around. It didn't sound like there were enough in there. When we went back, he picked them out and then he put it quickly on the desk, called out the number 1, 2, 3, and then he threw them back in the bin.
You want my answer?
Yes.
I've never had a clerk hold up the numbers.
Never? Do you ever ask to see them before they go in? Well, I think
not.
maybe you should start to make that part of your custom and habit.
Yeah.
Because we believe there may have been some shenanigans, because it just so happens that the alternates that were chosen were pro Karen Read. One of them is now working with the defense team. That's interesting too.
That's right. I forgot that. That's really interesting. I've been hired by former jurors. I've never had one work.
You've never hired them to work for you.
No, and one of the first two of them, one of them called, and I called the Board of Bar Overseers because it just seemed like too weird. But the Board of Bar Overseers said, no, there's no conflict.
Yeah, because the jurors saw you in action and they were like, I want that guy, when they got pulled over or whatever it is that they did. Hopefully it wasn't a murder case.
No, it was 2 police officers who were accused of larceny while on duty. And my client was found not guilty and the other guy was found guilty. And she came to my office and said, I've never had to deal with a lawyer. You're the only lawyer I've ever dealt with besides the other lawyer, and you won. So I figured I'm going to hire you.
It's a ringing endorsement.
That's about as direct as you can get.
Sorry, I don't remember my lie. Says, how is destroying a phones even close to deleting text messages? It isn't, and Hank will not win that battle against AJ and destroying of phones. I agree with you. Hi, Nikki. Is it normal that the Commonwealth needs to hire expert witnesses for every aspect of their case? Crash reconstruction, phone analysis, medical testimony?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say so too. Adam Lally's resignation says, Tom, please tell Brian I think of him often. and glad he's doing well. Bo, that's Bo who came to the courthouse. She was our court watcher. I said, somebody needs to get into that courthouse if anybody lives near Hampshire County. And she drove from however far away she was, and she went there, and she was there for it. So
Okay,
she's
Bo.
telling you. Yeah. Thank you. Sharon wants to know, should Karen Read testify? She thinks no. What do you think?
Here's what I think. In my opinion, she's got to stop talking to the press, and she is the only person who can make that decision. It is not the lawyer's decision. It is the client's
Right.
decision. Many people don't know that it is the client's decision to go to trial or plead, not the lawyer's. It is the client's decision to have a jury trial or a bench trial, not the lawyer's. And it is the client's decision whether or not they're going to take the stand. And I don't know if they did last time, but usually
She did not.
a judge in this type of case, oftentimes, and this is what I said, I don't know if that happened in this case, will put on the record,
Yeah.
ask the defendant, so this is your decision, you're doing it freely, willingly, and voluntarily, that you're not taking the stand.
They did a colloquy, yeah, but it was
Okay.
sidebar. We didn't hear it,
Yeah.
of course. It wasn't an open court, but yes, she absolutely did. I think, Brian Camp testified in his trial, and he was an amazing witness. And I think that's why he was acquitted. The jury wanted to hear from him. And the prep that you did with him was on point because he was an amazing witness.
I have, I've tried to do the math, and this is just to show my experience. I've tried to do the math of the number of trials that I've done, and it's worked out to about 2.3 trials per month for 31 years.
Wow.
And that was the fifth time I put my client on the stand.
Wow.
So, but that was the type of case where, we got to show that, he was in fear for his life, for the life of his children, and that this guy was not, that he was still able to get up, as that's what he was doing. So, and that, I prepare them. I prepare everybody as if they're going to testify, because what it does is it helps me with my cross exam and starts to get them ready in case they're gonna. And then when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, your call. What do you think? Obviously, with my advice. And Brian said, I'm ready. And in my opinion, Steve Gagne is the best trial prosecutor in the Commonwealth.
Interesting.
He is a brutal combination of, because he used to be an appellate prosecutor. So he's just really bright. And so he is able to do his own sort of appellate stuff while the trial's going on, including arguing cases. Like I had to hire a guy from Connecticut to do what he was doing on the fly, and he can put on a case and he can cross-examine. So yeah, that's Steve Gagne. I forget why I was talking about him. What was the question?
I don't know, putting Karen on the stand.
Yeah. And so Brian Camp, with a high school diploma,
was a great witness.
dealt with that.
Yeah.
Cross-examining him. Go ahead.
Lorelai is giving you a shout out that your chin reminds her of James Garner. So I'm sure you'll take that.
I will.
Here's another question for you. Can when Bev strikes comments, when Hank Brennan isn't even asking for it to be stricken, can it be stricken? Can she
Yes.
strike something sua sponte? Yeah, I thought so too.
Yes. Again, everybody's getting all amped up about what's going on.
It's normal.
I have had the experience of almost every person in that courtroom, including having a family member killed by someone. and it went to court. But I don't have the experience of the judge, and the judge is the judge, and I've learned to get over my boo-boo hurt feelings when a judge isn't doing what I like,
Right.
and just trying to figure out how I deal with it.
And you have to. And we've all seen judges that we think are unfair to us, but and
And-
listen, when I became a lawyer in the early 90s, most of the bias towards me was because I was a woman lawyer. There were not a lot of women
No.
in the courtroom in
No
the early
question.
90s when we became lawyers, right? And so every time I would walk into a courtroom or a deposition, I would get the old boys club and they'd be like, "Oh, hey, sweetie, you can set up over there in the corner," thinking I was the court reporter because I was a woman. So we've all dealt with it. There was a judge in Brooklyn who would not allow female attorneys to wear slacks in his courtroom. If you didn't come in a skirt, I mean, it's insane what I've dealt with. So
Wow.
this is like a walk in the cake, like a walk in the park. Like it's horrible and it looks horrific to people who don't experience it and live it every single day and who haven't lived it for decades. But
And I might add, just to put a fine point on it, and that's what these defense lawyers are doing, especially now that I know that they've only got an hour for closing. Now it all makes sense to me.
Right. And there's nobody looking over her shoulder that's going to come in and stop the trial and tell her if she's doing a bad job. It just does not work that way.
That
They
happens
have
on appeal
judicial
if there's a
discretion.
conviction.
Right. If there's a conviction, everything is preserved for appeal. But as it's going on, we talked about this earlier. Thoughts on Bettero being denied his pro hoc vice to join Karen's team. You have seen that before, yeah?
I had heard that happened. I didn't know if she gave a reason. Did she give a reason?
She said yes, because she thought it was an unwaivable conflict because he also represents Aiden Carney.
Yep.
Even though both clients had signed off on it, had their own attorneys look at the agreements and signed off, she decided it was an unwaivable conflict and denied.
I agree with her.
Okay. There we go. Thank you, Labrador Mommy, for your 10 and for your comment. Melanie, you've been one of the only lawyers to take a stance and speak out about this case since the beginning. I love your moral compass. Thank you. I'm outraged. I was outraged about this from the beginning because John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. My 30 years handling motor vehicle accidents, it makes it so obvious to me. Does the FBI normally subpoena the defense file? Says Ashley. Is that something you've ever seen before? Because they did say in court that the FBI subpoenaed our file and we gave it to them.
I've heard of that. I've not experienced it.
Okay. No, Norman Tom has not been to Cancun with me. No, he has not.
What?
There was a reporter. There was a Twitter rumor going around before the first trial. I was watching Alan Jackson, and he had this bracelet on. It was like a rope bracelet.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, that looks like one of the bracelets that I got at Dave Matthews in Cancun last month. I wonder if he went to Cancun." That morphed into like a game of Melanie Little was in Cancun with Alan Jackson. And then some reporter actually went up to him on the courthouse steps and said, "Did you have fun in Cancun with Melanie Little?" and shoved the mic in his face and then chased him up the stairs and asked him again, "You've got one of the greatest trial lawyers of our time in front of you. And that's the question you're going to ask?" No, I didn't go to Cancun with Alan Jackson, but I do have merch that says I went to Cancun with attorney Melanie Little because of that. And I'll send you a sweatshirt.
Sweet.
Zendan, so I heard there was no snow or salt inside of the taillight. Can you address that? I am not an expert. I cannot address that. I know somebody did a video about it. I really don't have the expertise to opine on that. I don't know if you have any idea what he's talking about or that viewer was talking about. Sarah, Boulder and Burlington, Vermont, same architect. Oh, that's awesome. They say Boulder is like sometimes they say it's the Ithaca of the West, but
it's like
Becky
Hartford too.
Yeah, like Hartford. Hartford is the worst. No shade to Hartford. Hartford is the worst. Becky says, "I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than with Mel, Mods, and Cupcakes in this trial and love it when Mel hit the pause button to explain what's going on." Thank you, Becky. I appreciate that. If guilty, will Ayatollah Kanoni give her life?
Oh my gosh.
I sometimes say Kim Jong Kanoni, but you know what? I do not practice in Massachusetts. And so it's just a joke. Do you think she would give her life if she was convicted of? Are there guidelines on second degree murder convictions?
Yeah, there's guidelines. There's sentencing guidelines.
Latitude.
They're suggestive, more suggestive in most courts than the federal sentencing guidelines. You have better opportunity to depart downward in the state. I mean, if she's convicted of second, she's got to,
She has to sentence her to life?
with possibility of parole after 15 years.
Okay. That makes what I've been doing here for a year and a half all worth it because I can't stop talking about it. Cape Cod cred. Tom, many years ago, you gave me legal advice through a friend. Initials are BE from Springfield. Great to see you again. Was glued to the camp trial with Melanie. Oh, there's a ringing endorsement. Cape
Thanks.
Cod cred. Can you go on Google reviews and give Tom a good review on his website, which is linked below this video?
Gave me legal advice through a friend. Excellent.
Yeah. How do you like that? Stacy, can Tom explain a bit more regarding not being a homicide and the victim still being assigned the victim witness advocate? How often does one testify for nefarious reasons and actually be held accountable?
Can't explain a bit more regarding not being a homicide and the victims still being assigned.
So if it's not a homicide case,
Yep.
do victims still, can they still be assigned a victim witness advocate
They are automatically assigned a victim witness advocate
in any felony case?
in any case.
Any
Any
case.
case that
Doesn't
any
have to be a
case that
felony?
has a victim in it. If
Okay.
you're the victim of a larceny, there's a victim witness advocate is going to send you a letter saying, how much money are you out? What do you want to have happen with this case? Be prepared because the next date is going to be the pretrial conference. You don't have to be there, but you can be there if you want. This case is scheduled for trial, so we're going to have you come in and prepare. Like every single witness that was ever called by the Commonwealth ever goes in to prepare to testify. The victim witness advocate prepares, coordinates that preparation. So any type of crime with a victim in it is assigned a victim witness advocate.
So it's a lot of logistics and, guidance, right?
They ask, I become interested in it when, say, the alleged victim is the wife of my client, and say once everybody is sobered up after my client's been arrested, realize what happened, the named victim does not want to testify against her husband. She has the right to assert her marital privilege.
Mhm.
And so if I hear maybe through the grapevine that that's what's going on, I will tell the prosecutor, this is what I'm hearing. And the victim witness advocate usually reaches out and says, hey, what are you going to do if we call you in here to testify? So, or Fifth Amendment right. If your victim, if it's a mutual combat, which is not legal, but only one person gets charged and the other person punched my guy at some point, I'm going to cross-examine him all day long about punching my guy, unless, of course, he wants to assert his privilege against self-incrimination and not testify. So victim witness advocates become involved in that sort of pipeline as well.
Mm-hmm. Denise, thank you so much for buying 5 matcha lattes and says, this court case is fascinating. Thank you for covering it and educating me. Michelle, thank you for your matcha lattes. Thank you so very much. She said this time it's going to be The Devil Went Down to Canton. She's going to, yes, we already did discuss the ex parte behavior. Thank you very much. We played that earlier. So Michelle, go back and rewind. I appreciate you guys more than you know. And Tom, this was really fun. For Sarah B. Creative says, fun fact, my great-great-grandfather was Crowbar governor of Connecticut and know a lot of Hartford. I don't know what the Crowbar governor of Connecticut means.
Me neither.
Melissa says, my favorite Eagle Scout Alessi is also a teacher. He teaches judges on how to be judges. Being under Kim Jong-un must be so frustrating, so frustrating. Blessed Mom from Texas, Melanie, I'll email, but me and my daughter, victim advocate, hasn't done much. My daughter is 10. He's taken a plea, but she hasn't told us much. Thank you, Blessed Mom
Call
from
her.
Texas.
Call her and write, because it is your right. If you're in Massachusetts, there is a statute which gives you those rights, and they are required to inform you of every stage of the prosecution and ask you what you want to have happen and ask you if you're out of pocket any money and what you want to have happen if this person is sentenced. So don't be shy about calling the person who sent you that letter with their number at the bottom of it.
Yeah, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And they're
Yeah.
busy, you can't, I get 700 emails a day. I try and read them all, but I can't respond to all of them. But again, this is their job, so they should be. Right? So that's your advice. Reach out to them.
Don't think that you're bothering them. That's their job.
About what percentage of cases include alcohol?
That's a really good question. I'm going to assume you mean criminal cases, and I am going to add drugs to that, and I would say 80% of the cases that I deal with. Well,
80?
you know what? Then I'm going to add mental health issues too. So alcohol, drugs, and mental health issues brings it up to more like 90. You're not stealing because everything's great.
Right. Wow. Is it true Massachusetts courts usually don't allow law enforcement experts to testify about proper investigation protocol? This goes back to Michael Easter, the witness that they wanted to testify about proper procedure. This judge said that it is within the ken of the jury that they know enough about police procedure that they don't need an expert. And by the way, you can cross-examine the experts on the improper procedure. Thoughts on that?
It's a good question. Let me reread is it true the mass court? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would have to say usually don't. Yes. I think that it is. I could be wrong, but I think that it is within their purview to allow it or not. I actually contacted that expert after he was poo-pooed in that case, and
Michael Easter.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's got all kinds of.
So it's not that the court usually doesn't allow them to testify; it's that she has the discretion.
Right.
Last comment before we have to wrap. Athena, when I graduated law school in the 70s, no open-toe shoes or pants in the courtroom. Wow. Patty Gardner, Melanie, with all these cases you're covering, when do you have time for your own cases? I'm retired, babe. I'm retired. This is what I do now. Thank you, though. And Becky, can't the defense call Jen back after she has testified for the Commonwealth or once she has left the stand? That is, she can't take the stand anymore.
As long as, oh, I'm sorry. Can the defense call her?
You. Yeah, can the defense call her back on their case in chief?
If they have her under subpoena, yes.
And if she's got any, if it's a different topic, or they can't ask her all the same questions they already asked her, it's got to be something new.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. This was really fun. Thank you so much for coming on with me today and spending 2 hours with me. This was great. I think everyone enjoyed you.
That flew by.
It did, right?
Yes.
Will you come back with me one day and do live trial coverage? If you ever have a down day and you want to come on and do some live trial coverage, you have an open invitation.
I would love to.
That would be fantastic. Let everyone know how they can reach you in case they are, God forbid, in need of a criminal defense attorney, either on the Cape or elsewhere. How can they find you? I linked your website below. And in what counties do you practice?
I practice across the Commonwealth. I actually have an office in Western Mass, an office in Northampton. I have an office in Springfield, and my main office is on Cape Cod in Orleans. But I go up to places like Dedham, and although I don't know if I'm gonna now, but I go.
You haven't said anything inappropriate at all. We're just talking about in general type stuff. I'm the one who screams about it when you're not here. I know that you have to practice there.
I fear no man or woman.
Have you met me?
Unless they're no.
Have you met me?
No, I have not.
Joel on STS said, "I'm only afraid of two women, my mother and my wife, and now I'm afraid of Melanie Little." And haven't been back on that show.
If you just Google my name, if you've got it spelled correctly, it should come up. I spend enough money on search engine optimization that if it doesn't, I'll be contacting the company. So
what about Bristol County? Bristol County?
Yeah.
All right. All counties in Massachusetts. All right. Thank you so much. I hope you will come back soon.
I will.
Everyone, you please be kind in your comments and please let us know what you want us to talk about next. And also please hit the like button because, it helps the girl out. And we're trying to get to 100,000 subs so I can get that silver play button because, I'm shallow like that. It's free to subscribe. Just hit the button, hit the bell. I will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early for what are we up to? Day 9 of the Karen Read trial. Live coverage all week long. We're here for at least 8 hours a day. It's going to be a long week this week, but it is so exciting that it's hard to turn away. So I hope you'll join us, Tom, because we're here.
Excellent.
All right. Stay cool, stay kind, stay classy, my friends. I love you with all of my heart. If I don't see you soon, I'm going to die. But I will see you tomorrow morning around 8:50 a.m. on the East Coast. Peace.
Bye.